Okay, our next proclamation is my own. I'd like to ask all those associated with the commemoration of the Emancipation Proclamation to please come forward.
This is your public comment sign-in sheet.
And as they make their way forward, we're going to be joined by Dan Moore of the Apex Museum, Carrie Colton, the Williams Auburn Avenue Research Library, Andrea Jackson from the Robert Woodruff Library, Myrna Anderson Fuller from the Hammonds House Museum, John Foster from Big Bethel AME Church, Emmanuel McCall from Friendship Baptist Church, Marvin Greer, the preserver of history of the United States Colored Troops, and abolitionist Major Marion Delaney, Emma Davis Middleton, from the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society, James Hayes, Shefford Dale from the Atlanta History Center, Gianna Siraki from the Department of Natural Resources and Historic Preservation, O.V. Brantley from the Clara Ford Foundation and a former city attorney here at the City of Atlanta, Nanette Washington Douglas from the Frederick Douglass Family Initiatives, Samuel Livingston from the Morehouse College African American Studies Department, Sarai Mercata from Spelman Department of African American from Spelman College, and Jackie Herring from the Big Bethel AME Church, Anthony Baker from John Marshall Law School, Roberta Phillips from Herndon Holmes Museum, Iwa Boa, Shrine of the Black Madonna and Center and Bookstore, Thelma Maya Thomas from the Public Historian, Nancy Ross from the United States Postal Service, Rob Richards from the National Archives and Records Administration in the Southeast Division, D.L. Henderson from Southview Cemetery, Mark Sanders from Emory University's African American Studies Department and Manuscript Archives and Rare Book Library, and Robert Williams from the Sable Arm in Acts and Valor. Today we have, all of these folks are here present. Come on around. I guess you all are around. But we're here today to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation. And for those of you who may not be familiar, the Emancipation Proclamation was a document that Abraham Lincoln authored and penned during the Civil War, made effective January 1st, 1863, that freed slaves in the areas where the states were active, or territories were active in rebellion against the United States. And that set the stage for the changing of the view of the Civil War at that time. Before that time, the Civil War was largely viewed as a disagreement amongst gentlemen brothers about their issues of their economy, but it was not viewed as a high moral purpose. After the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation, it became a cause for what the war was really about, but people really didn't acknowledge, was the cause to free and end slavery in the United States, something that was left undone after the framers had developed our Constitution. And so here today in the chamber, we, the City of Atlanta, the focal point of the Civil War, where the war actually turned on Atlanta falling, are here today to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the implementation of that document. You know, we stand here at City Hall on this side of the chamber, and prior to City Hall being built on this site, it was where the state capitol is. And the state of Georgia asked us to move our City Hall, and we did so. When we built this building, it was built on a neighborhood called Shermantown. And Shermantown was the result of African Americans congregating in this portion of town after Sherman had come through and paid us a visit here in town on his way to Savannah. And Shermantown eventually developed into the community of Summerhill, for which my mother, a lot of folks in this city, lineage comes from. A lot of people don't realize that Sherman set up shop to bomb the city on the site where Marsh Brown is today. That hilltop is actually the second highest point in the United States. And so he laid siege to the city of Atlanta for 44 days before it fell. And that victory gave Lincoln the push he needed to win re-election. And so the 13th Amendment probably never would have happened if Lincoln, or we'd be living in a very different America, or Americas, if Lincoln had not won that election. So I guess it's appropriate that we be here in Atlanta, appropriate that it is election season, so what we do here does have effect. And I'll get to read. We have several proclamations for all the organizations that are represented here today that'll be distributed to them when we read the proclamation. But I'll read it in pertinent part. In honor of the 150th anniversary of the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, whereas on January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, which declared all persons enslaved in any state or designated part of a state in rebellion against the United States henceforth and forever free. And whereas the Emancipation Proclamation officially allowed the long-awaited measure of accepting African Americans into the armed services of the United States, resulting in black men and women serving as Union soldiers, sailors, and military informers in the war to preserve the Union and to abolish slavery. Whereas the Emancipation Proclamation was issued as a military necessity, yet embraced as a freedom measure by the millions in bondage and by the hundreds of black and white who agitated for freedom. And whereas the year 2013 marks the 150th anniversary of the signing of this pivotal document, and citizens of all walks of life have joined in to celebrate, commemorate, and to honor this turning point in American and African American history. And whereas the Atlanta-based organizations and individuals that have been instrumental in preserving and interpreting African American history and culture and sacrifices of those whose shoulders we stand on is in keeping with the African tradition of Sankofa, which teaches that we must go back and fetch our tools in order to meet the members of the Atlanta City Council on behalf of the citizens. The 16th day of September 2 in commemoration of the Emancipation, our fair city and witness of the city of Atlanta to be here into effects. Congratulations. Ms. Netta Douglas. Now this young lady is the descendant of Frederick Douglass, who at that time, as we all know, was one of the chief abolitionists of the day. So we are presented the proclamation to her, even though all of the organizations will receive one. But I believe it fitting that she be here to accept in the spirit of that lineage and that history. So if you could give us some brief remarks, we would deeply appreciate it.
Thank you so very much. This is a surprise. I didn't know I was going to get this honor. This has been an awesome year for the celebration of the Emancipation Proclamation. And I just want to say that while Frederick Douglass and President Abraham Lincoln were credited with freeing our ancestors, it took more than just the two of them. And I just like to share that all of us that are descended from slaves should be as proud as I am standing here today celebrating what our people did 150 years ago. We wouldn't be here today if it hadn't been for them. And taking that further, as the council member mentioned, going forward, we still have work to do. We thought that slavery had ended 150 years ago, but we have an even bigger problem, a worldwide problem, with what is referred to as modern-day slavery. So if I ask all of you here, let's do in the future what our ancestors did for us and see if we cannot eradicate slavery, period, altogether. And I do want so much to thank Councilman Michael Bond for recognizing all of the organizations that are here. And if I can just end on a positive note for Frederick Douglass, if you let me be a little bit selfish, on June the 19th in Washington, D.C., in our magnificent United States Capitol, in all places, Emancipation Hall, Frederick Douglass statue, a beautiful 7-foot bronze statue of Frederick Douglass, was unveiled on June the 19th, which we know is Juneteenth. So I invite you all, when you go to D.C., you must go by and see him. And if you're unable to get to D.C., please go to cspan.org, type in Frederick Douglass statue, and you can see the 1 hour and 5-minute official U.S. congressional ceremony that took place. And again, on behalf of my family, and if I may be so presumptuous as to everybody standing up here, thank you so very much for extending us this honor.
Mr. Nettie Douglas is also the descendant of Booker T. Washington. And as a graduate of Frederick Douglass High School, we'll forgive you for that part. Because Washington was our rival back in school. And David T. Howard, that's my mother's school. Or David T. Howard Rams. So the history is all in and all dug in here now. But in all seriousness, now I have the opportunity now to bring forward Dr. Fan, who did most of the research, well, did pretty much all the research in helping us pull this together and put the proclamation together. And she's going to give us some remarks about the history and why this is so powerful.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This is indeed a wonderful occasion. Anytime that we can celebrate our history and celebrate freedom, we all need to be on board. We talk about freedom, and we know that freedom is not free. Everyone in this room knows that you have to work for freedom. You have to fight, you have to march, you have to struggle. Some people had to die for freedom. So we stand here on the shoulders of those who endured, those who looked for that brighter day, and those who wished to see the Emancipation Proclamation. Who were some of those people? We stand here for a woman named Katie Bowie. She says her name was changed by Jack Jones, who purchased her at a sheriff's sale, changed her name from Emily. We stand on the shoulders of those people, such as Mark Nesbitt, 23, a mill worker, who said he hadn't seen his mother in 11 years before she was sold to speculators. We stand here remembering those people such as Sylvie Jones, 42-year-old washerwoman. She had a complexion that was almost white. She talked about her family, and she said her husband died a year after the surrender. She added that her 4 children are dead, and as for her father, Thomas Dobbs, he died crossing the Atlantic Ocean, having got drowned. I'm wondering if he was trying to get back home. We stand here on the shoulders of those black men who fought on the Union side. Marcus Jones, Company H, 33rd Regiment of the United States Colored Troops. Thomas Glenn, Company K, 135th Regiment. Both of these men tell that they were enslaved on plantations here in Atlanta. We stand on the shoulders of those who didn't live to see this day. 11 slaves arrested in July 1851 in Atlanta on the charge of plotting an insurrection. This is recorded in the City Council records, July 29th, 1851. So we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. We stand knowing that we have to continue to look and to watch, because in a twinkling of an eye, freedom can disappear if we are not vigilant. We stand here because I remember that old Negro spiritual that kept us going in those tough times and told us to be ever watchful. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. The time is drawing nigh, so children, don't get weary. Children, don't get weary. Children, don't get weary till your work is done. Emancipation Proclamation, forever free. Thank you.
Thank you. That's not bad for Miss Roselle's fan daughter-in-law, is it? That's not too bad. Next, we'll be joined quickly by Gina Sirikey of the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, the Historic Preservation Division.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank you, Councilman Bond and the Atlanta City Council for recognizing the importance of us remembering the Emancipation Proclamation. I'd also like to thank Velma Fan for putting together this program today, and for my fellow history keepers that I'm on stage with. All of us celebrate the stories of freedom in our research, in our writing, in our reenactments, and in all the things we knew and do to keep freedom alive, both here in Atlanta and in Georgia. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we also have Sheffield Hale of the Atlanta History Center. Mr. Hale.
Well, thank you very much, Councilman Bond. At the History Center, we are very excited about this year and the Emancipation Proclamation, and next year when we celebrate, or we don't celebrate, we commemorate the fall of Atlanta. And like you said before, that was the seminal event that led to Lincoln's re-election, and therefore the 13th Amendment came directly from that. But the other thing that people like me need to recognize is there were a lot of other people emancipated as a result of the Emancipation Proclamation, and that was the white people in the country. And I want to thank you for recognizing the Emancipation Proclamation, because it was emancipated us from a terrible system.
Thank you. And now we have Mr. Marvin Greer, the Preservation of History of the United States Colored Troops. Mr. Greer.
First off, I'd like to thank Councilman Bond for having me today, and all of you guys for coming out, and my fellow awardees for you guys' constant dedication to preserving African American history and culture. Most people, when they see me dressed up, or my mentor and friend James Hayes over here, they see us dressed up in uniform. They ask us, why are you guys dressed up in black guys dressed up in Confederate uniforms? And I think that's the perfect place to begin with the miseducation that the Civil War is all about Confederate history. We are not dressed up as Confederate soldiers, one, and that African Americans only played a passive role in the Civil War and were victimized by slavery. The story of enslaved people is not a story of victimization, but a story of survival and resistance. How enslaved people prior to the Civil War took up arms, rebelled, fought back, even more passive ways. My good friend Velma sang a song. Storytelling, songs, foodways were ways of people resisting, enslaved people resisting. These cultural remnants still exist today throughout the African American community and throughout the American communities. When the Civil War began, thousands and thousands of black men, both North and South, flocked to the Union armies, not only to serve as laborers, but also to serve as soldiers. And they were told, no, this is a white man's war, and we are not fighting to free the slaves. However, in 1862, after the Battle of Antietam, Abraham Lincoln finally had the courage to state the fact of what this war is about: to emancipate the slaves. Yes, the North was not fighting originally to free the slaves. However, the South, in their own words, were fighting. Their sole mission was to preserve their right to own property, and their property was the right to own Negro slaves. But on January 1st, 1863, it allowed for Abraham Lincoln and the United States government to allow for eventually 200,000 plus African American men to serve in black regiments, another 30,000 to serve in white regiments, in the Navy, an unknown number to serve in white regiments alongside their white brothers and counterparts. Eventually in 1865, Congress passes the 13th Amendment, which ultimately ends slavery throughout the United States, legally, of course. But did that mean equality? No. The fight for justice began long before the Civil War, and still continues to this day. But the Civil War was the basis, and where black men and white men, black women and white men and women took up arms, took up the needle, took up the pen and paper, and fought to preserve American freedom and American values for all people. And we're still fighting for those freedoms and values to this day. Thank you.
We're about to take a photograph, but we would be remiss if we did not do one stanza of Lift Every Voice and Sing, which was a poem written by James Weldon Johnson for a group of school children commemorating the Emancipation Proclamation at their school more than 120 years ago, I believe, formally. And of course, James Weldon Johnson had a unique connection to Atlanta. He lived here for a period of time and was actually one of the founders of the Atlanta NAACP in 1919. So if we would all please stand, and I'm going to ask Dr. Fan to come in and lead us in one stanza of Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the hope that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won.
Well, as a great-grandson of a slave, former Reverend James Bond, former pastor of Rush Congregational Church over in the AU Center, I thank you all for being here. And now the City Council will do what we do best. Please gather up and take a beautiful picture. Please, come on up. And remember, if you cannot see the camera, you are not in the picture. Well, you know what? Should we have